In the city filled with dazzling light, Qatar, skyscrapers and modern buildings soar into the sky, making this place seem like a land overflowing with wealth and power. But behind this glamorous exterior lies another reality that remains unseen. The foundation of this shining city is built on the blood and sweat of countless migrant workers. They came to this land dreaming of a better life, but what awaited them was endless labor, pain, and an oppressed life stripped of freedom. Today we follow the story of one such person, Ravi. In a small rural village in India, life was poor, but to Ravi, it was a paradise. The time he spent with his son was the most precious in his life. At night, they would sit together in the yard and talk while looking at the stars. However, the village could not escape the shadow of poverty. Ravi wished every day that his son would not be trapped in the same poverty as he was. Finally, when a job opportunity in Qatar appeared before him, Ravi couldn't pass it up. The night before he left, Ravi sat in the yard with his son one last time, looking at the stars.
Dad is going to make money and give you a better life. Can you wait just a little longer?
His son nodded with a bright smile, and Ravi carried that smile in his heart as he left for Qatar. Arriving in Qatar, Ravi was filled with excitement to start a new life, but what greeted him was a harsh reality. The foreman, who was waiting for him, greeted Ravi with a cold face. From his cold gaze, Ravi instinctively felt that life would not be easy from now on. The accommodation assigned to him was a shock. A narrow, unsanitary room with poor ventilation and a small window, crammed with dozens of workers. Ravi missed the warm home and the faces of his family back in his homeland, but he told himself he had to endure all of this for a better life. The next morning at dawn, even before the sun rose, Ravi had to head to the construction site. It was a place where endless heat, dust, and merciless labor awaited him. Without being provided proper protective equipment, he was forced to do dangerous work. Ravi lifted giant steel beams and carried heavy cement sacks, feeling himself reaching the limits of his endurance. As time passed, Ravi realized just how unjust his situation was. His wages were much less than what was stated in the contract, and even then, they were not paid properly. Finally, Ravi could no longer bear it and approached the foreman to protest. The foreman replied with a cynical smile.
What right do you think you have here? Just do your job.
His anger and despair remained locked inside him. Under the Kafala system, Ravi had no power. Then, one day, Ravi received a letter from his homeland. His son had fallen seriously ill and was hospitalized. He immediately demanded his delayed wages to send money for the hospital bills, but the foreman dismissively rejected his request.
Your country's problem is none of my concern. I'll pay you later, so keep working.
In despair, Ravi begged.
Then I'll forgo my wages. Please just let me go home.
But once again, his plea was coldly ignored. Changing jobs or leaving the country required the employer's permission. He could do nothing for his family. The Kafala system had trapped him in this land, stripping him of all his freedom. That night, Ravi wept in deep despair, thinking of his son's face. He felt trapped in a hopeless night that seemed it would never end. Ravi's story is not just one man's tragedy. It reflects the reality faced by hundreds of thousands of migrant workers in the Middle East, especially in Qatar. These workers left their homelands dreaming of a better life, but what they encountered was not a land of opportunity, but a system of oppression and exploitation. The name of this system is the Kafala System. The Kafala System is an employment structure that binds migrant workers to specific employers, widely used in several Middle Eastern countries. Under this system, workers cannot change jobs or leave the country without their employer's permission. Employers control the issuance and renewal of workers' visas, completely holding their fate in their hands. This structure prevents workers from protesting or resisting, even when they are treated unfairly. Workers often work excessive hours in poor conditions, live in unsanitary housing, and frequently do not receive fair wages. They are powerless, unable to raise their voices, and dependent on the mercy of their employers. As Qatar prepared to host the 2022 FIFA World Cup, criticism of Qatar and the Kafala system intensified. International human rights organizations condemned the Kafala system as modern-day slavery, a system that deprives workers of their freedom, ignores their rights, and tramples on their dignity as human beings. In response to these criticisms and international pressure, the Qatari government began efforts to reform the system. The government announced reforms to the Kafala system, introducing legal measures that allow migrant workers to change jobs and leave the country without their employer's permission. Additionally, systems were introduced to manage the payment of workers' wages more transparently. Although the reforms in Qatar are a positive step, it requires ongoing monitoring and additional efforts to ensure that migrant workers are truly protected and their rights are guaranteed in practice. It is our responsibility to ensure that the suffering of these workers is no longer ignored. The reform of the Kafala system and the protection of migrant workers' rights cannot end as mere declarations. It is our duty to ensure that workers like Ravi are no longer oppressed and that their dreams do not turn into nightmares. After enduring pain and hardship, Ravi finally boarded a plane back to his homeland. As the plane landed on his home soil, the familiar air and scenery warmly embraced his heart. He began walking down the road back to the home he had longed for. The scenery along the road evoked memories that had been buried deep in his heart. In the distance, the sun was setting, and darkness was beginning to fall over the village. When Ravi arrived home, the house was quiet, as if time had stood still. And then, in the middle of the yard, he saw someone sitting. The sight took his breath away.
My son, I'm home.
Ravi's heart swelled with emotion. He could no longer hold back. He ran toward his son and embraced him tightly.
Dad, you've come back.
Yes, I've come back.